Welcome to Bunch Formation, your newest favorite college football show. I am Chris Vanini, and I'm willing to take a taser to show my love for the Independence Bowl.
And I am David Ubben, and I would never, ever opt out of BYU's football team consuming my toasted body.
Yeah, how about that? What was it? Protein or slamming strawberry? The
slamming strawberry. I guess I don't know that the world needed Pop-Tarts infused with protein powder, which is what I assume that is. I don't know that we needed that, but it exists. And apparently strength is what's inside of you, not what's inside of your biceps, because that was a cowardly act if I've ever seen one.
Yeah, the strawberry Pop-Tart opted out of getting eaten alive, just like Notre Dame opted out of playing in that bowl game. It would have been nice if they made kind of a joke about that, but the story of the Pop-Tarts continues. Welcome to our big quarterfinal preview. We've got official bowl games. We got 8 teams left. We got neutral sites. We're going to go deep on all 4 of those games. I'll be at one of them. We're also going to talk Kyle Whittingham to Michigan and all the remaining bowl games and quizzing David on their sponsors. If you haven't checked out the show notes, we got timestamps in there if you want to jump ahead. Send emails and feedback to bunchformationpod@gmail.com. And we're Bunch Formation on everything: Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all that stuff. Please give us a 5-star review and a comment with that, and we will read them all in the show. And we got a couple more, so thank you for that. We got one from What the Hell Is This, who says, I've been a big college football podcast nomad for several years and finally found a home with Bunch Formation. Plus, I've come full circle on David because as a 2012 grad of A&M while he was covering the Big 12, my collegiate self was convinced he was just a hater. In my wisdom of aging, I've learned he just calls it like it is, and the Aggies were mainly garbage from 2008 to 2011. You guys do a great job of covering all the ends of the sport. Keep up the good work. David responds.
Like most people, I respect a college kid who thinks he knows everything. I've been there. I too knew everything when I was in college, and I have since gotten dumber. So, I appreciate this. You need to make some calls to the Texas Tech fans in your life, the Iowa State fans in your life. There is a persistent internet theory that I covered the Big 12 for half of my career and never went to Ames. There was a couple others, and that's just not accurate. So I don't know. There's some leftover grudges. I feel like I'll tweet about something and I'll get people that know me from the ESPN days. It feels like another lifetime ago. They're still mad about something I wrote in 2011 that aged pretty well. So, appreciate the whatever we want to call this full circle moment, I suppose.
I feel like that stuff doesn't stick as much any longer. I remember I wrote something about Connor Cook in 2012, and MSU fans still hold it over me. But if you were to write it now, everybody moves on.
There's so much more Tennessee fans, Chris. Have you?
Yeah, that's true. Well, but that was also kind of back from another time. We know Tennessee fans.
Wasn't that long ago? That was like 3 years ago. Come on now.
Another review from Stump0331. Hey guys, I came over from the Getting Over Pod, which is my pro wrestling podcast, and been listening since the beginning of the season. I thoroughly enjoy your podcast and look forward to new drops every week. Makes my cardio fly by. Just wanted to give my 5 stars and say, get some of those helmet stickers out. I'd slap them on some stuff. Will you guys be going year round? Keep up the good work and roll Tide. As far as we haven't actually officially talked about it, but as far as I know, we plan to do this all year. The off-season cadence, we're not sure yet, but at least once a week, because there's always something going on in the sport.
I will say, Chris, I'm sad that this year we won't have somebody over our head telling us that everything about the show is changing. So,
yes, I think it'd be nice to control.
I'm going to leave it at that. Not comment further on that.
We're all set on that. And we got a email here from Ashwin that I wanted to actually touch on early in the show. What are your thoughts on the CFP switching to more of an NFL style playoffs? I think the higher seed should host every game except for the championship, and that there should be reseeding between rounds, i.e. the 1 seed would play the lowest remaining seed, etc. This would give more of an incentive to get a higher seed and keep games at campus stadiums, which I think is really cool. I know you already covered this in an earlier show, but wanted to hear your opinions. How do we feel about these games at neutral sites? I felt like this was a good topic to kind of start the show off with, because we got the Cotton Bowl, we got the Rose Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, and the what was the other one?
I lose track of what's what every year. I know I'm covering the Peach Bowl this year, but it like rotates. So
that's a semifinal. So there's a few, like, in a vacuum, in theory, I would love all these games to be on campus sites. I just went to Oklahoma, Alabama first round game. Unbelievable environment. I went to Penn State last year. Unbelievable. David went to Ohio State for the game last year. That's what college football is. You can feel it. It's different. And in theory, I would love to continue that for the rest of the season. That's how it should be. The one thing I will say, though, is that it is different in college because at this time of year, everybody's on break and there's not many people there. And a lot of these college towns are in the middle of nowhere sometimes. And staffing those games is very hard. When I covered the Penn State game last year, they, I think, barely had enough like ushers and stuff like that to do that. It's easier in the NFL when you're in a big city and all of your workers live there. And you can do things on a kind of a quicker turnaround. Also, student sections might be hard to fill up, over Christmas and New Year's and stuff like that. So I still think the trade-off would be worth it. And credit to Dan Lanning, who had said last week, like, he wishes they were playing their game at Texas Tech instead of a neutral site. I think everybody feels like that'd be the best, but it is just legitimately kind of a hard thing to do. And I understand both sides of it. David, what do you think?
I think that there's a way to do it and maybe reimagine in some ways the academic calendar. So like, it depends on where you went to school, right? Because the experience is different everywhere. I went to Missouri, very much a college town. When college is not in session, the town is completely different. Campus is abandoned. There's nothing going on there. And so like dorms are literally closed. Like you literally can't come back. And and like that's a financial thing, in terms of like keeping the dining halls open and keeping
like Notre Dame last year kept the dorms open like an extra day or two in case they had a home playoff game, which they did.
And so that part of it is complicated. But then once you get an apartment off campus, like I would come back to campus like 2 weeks before the fall semester, sometimes earlier because I had to cover football, but like I come up and just like hang out for a couple weeks. Like some people would come into town early. When you had a place to live, you could do that. So I wonder if there's a way on campus to change that and maybe just reimagine how you do that if you are in the playoff, to allow for some of that stuff to be made up for. I think I'm with you. I think that the logistics would be difficult, but I think the trade-off would be worth it. I'm still not sure why college football allows the bowls to dictate so much. It is a middleman that the sport doesn't necessarily need, and the bowls, as currently constructed, don't really make sense in the context of the sport, especially in the quarterfinals. These quarterfinal matchups, like I think you're going to see some. I have to look at the geography. I haven't really studied it. I'd have to look at it, but you're probably going to see some weak crowds for the reasons that we've hit on. Is that there's not a lot of people that get into the quarterfinals. It's like, if you're going to go to one game, this is the one you want to go to. Everybody that's in there is probably feeling like they can go further. And, you want to save up for that, the championship game or the semifinals. So we saw it last year. I think if you just look at the user experience of consumers, the quarterfinals is going to be the least desirable thing and the most difficult thing to go to. So I think the sport would be better for it. I don't know about reseeding. That probably would work fine. But I think if you did protect home field deeper into the playoff, that goes a long way in protecting the regular season and making sure, I don't ever want to get into a situation where you have starters rested at rivalry week. I think that that's a long way away. I don't know that we'll ever see that.
Yeah.
But in terms of does this make sense for our long-term goals? It's a defensible action in some contexts. I think we'll see what conference championship week becomes as well. I don't want, and I think if you have home field, then that does make a huge difference.
In terms of the reseeding, I've asked about that and kind of why they did that. And it was a bit twofold. One, the bowls like to know what team options could be there. Therefore,
Again,
all right.
Chris.
Wait,
Again,
well, let me.
why are we caring?
I'll get to that. I'll get to
they
that.
can get what they want and deal with it.
I'll get to that. One, the Bulls want to, hey, all right, these are the 4 potential teams we might have. So we're in constant communication with them about logistics and how that all works, as opposed to it could be anybody. The other part is it does help the schools who get the buys. All right, I know we're playing one of these 2 teams. So we're going to spend the next couple of weeks preparing for just both these teams instead of a slew of a bunch of different options. That theoretically is the benefit of getting a buy, is that you will have prepared longer for those teams. In terms of the role the Bulls play, it's really shifted throughout the history of college football, because they started out as just like exhibitions, make some money type of thing, see a new part of the country. And because for a long time, the polls that determine the national champion were before the bowl games. Like a number of national championships that are claimed are before that. And then bowls became the national championship because we started having, what happens in the bowl is going to determine the national championship. So then the bowls had the power, the BCS and all this kind of stuff, because that was where the national champion was being determined. And so you have that interesting relationship. You have also just personal relationships from people who have worked together for a long time. And, I know these guys at the Sugar Bowl, and they've been really great partners, and we don't want to just cut them out and yada, yada. So it's a mix of things that I think they just didn't want to cut off cold turkey. And I understand it to an extent. And again, the logistics of doing it on campus is pretty tough, but that is kind of the whole thing of how we get there. So the reseeding in the home sites, I can see both sides of it. I would rather do home sites. I think the reseeding doesn't bother me as much, I think.
Yeah.
Because theoretically the group of 5 is if the group of 5 was to get an upset, you're playing the number 4 seed. So it gets a little bit weird, but anyway, that's why that works. Figured it was a good time to explain it now that we're in quarterfinal week. And David, obviously we are coming up here on 2026, and that means people are making New Year's resolutions. Oftentimes that's to exercise more, get involved in their communities. And if you're a trainer, if you're a coach, if you're someone who organizes a running club or something, you need to use Poney. Poney, that's Poney, a new social scheduling app that makes getting your groups together and so much easier. They're the newest sponsor of Bunch Formation, and we're a big fan of what they do.
You can use it for lots of stuff. My sister has been messing around with it, using it for large family gatherings. There's over 10 million organizers currently in the United States alone, and no other app combines advanced scheduling tools with payment collection like Poney does. If you're an organizer, you have to juggle texts, calendar apps, spreadsheets, Venmos, all that stuff. Poney puts it all together in one easy app. It really helps quite a bit.
And in January, Poney is releasing its Pro Group Organizer feature, allowing you to collect payments from clients before they book. They're also releasing a private beta version soon that you'll be able to sign up and try that out.
And of course, everybody's dealt with last-minute cancellations. The Pop-Tarts Bowl, you know what we're talking about over there. That adds up, meaning for organizers, that's 20 to 30% of lost revenue. You want to avoid that, of course. And Poney has automated wait lists to help you do that. So if someone drops out, it'll automatically add the next person available and shoot them a message to confirm. Trainers, you can spend 10 plus hours a week on administrative work instead of teaching. Poney eliminates that last-minute scrambling and automatically keeps an event at capacity.
And your clients don't all have to download the app. You just send them a link with the info, and Poney does the work for you. It's frictionless infrastructure with Poney, no problem. Download Poney today. Make organizing effortless. That's Poney, Poney. Real plans with real clients and real friends made easy. Download Poney in the App Store or letspony.com today. All right, David, time to get into a bit of news over the weekend before we get into the quarterfinal games. And to do that, we go into the media scrum.
That's why I don't read the newspaper, because it's garbage.
Michigan has its new football coach, Kyle Whittingham, who had recently stepped down as the head coach at Utah. He's 66 years old. He signed a 5-year contract. He appears to be bringing, or at least hoping to bring, some top Utah assistants with him. I got to say, like, given the timing of everything with Michigan and the difficult situation it was in, I think this is about as well as you could have reasonably hoped for. Matt Campbell was already gone. Kalen DeBoer was probably not going to happen, especially after they won. And you're kind of running out of options. And you get a guy who is no nonsense. He plays the style of football you want. He's a guy who can put it all together, a guy who overachieves. And I think Michigan fans are ecstatic about this hire. And when I first started hearing word last week that Whittingham might end up being the guy, my first thought is like, oh, it's like a 1-year bridge thing, like a Jim Grobe at Baylor or something like that. And no, 5-year contract, more than $8 million per year. And if he does bring Jason Beck, the OC from Utah, and BYU defense coordinator Jay Hill over, that tells me that like he's going for it. And they're really planning to kind of do this thing. And no guarantee that it works, but my first early reaction was like, Kyle Whittingham's in this to really be in it. And I think if you're Michigan, you got to be happy about that.
Absolutely. And I can't help but feel like the Utah piece of this, Whittingham's time at Utah, the last few years has been kind of interesting. It was basically, like kind of a year-to-year thing. And I think people got tired of that at Utah. But considering what he had done at Utah, he deserved to go out on his terms. And, he made it clear that it was his choice to leave Utah and he stepped down. But, like, clearly it seemed like he wasn't being made to feel like his approach was welcome and that Utah wanted some clarity for their future. But it feels like a generational fumble on Utah's part. And Michigan is going to benefit. Michigan, pretty massive upgrade. I think there were a lot of questions about Sharon Moore as a head coach on the field from everything that we've seen for the last 2 years. The offense seemed to be in denial about the realities of its personnel, not very creative offensively. And, obviously when you look at some of the distractions, we'll call them, off the field, you're not going to get that with Kyle Whittingham. And Kyle Whittingham has shown a willingness to adapt on the field, off the field. And now he's got a lot more resources at Michigan. So I think this is going to be huge. I mean, the only negative is he's not 45 years old, but I don't think that matters all that much. It's not like he's on death's door. Experience is a pretty good teacher. And so huge for Michigan, but I really couldn't help but feel like, Utah kind of screwed this up, because if you got a coach like Kyle Whittingham and you make him feel like you don't necessarily want him around, that's on you.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Utah part of that. So Morgan Scalley, the defensive coordinator, was named the head coach in waiting like a long time ago, like many years ago. And he played there. He came up there. That was the thought. And then in, I think, 2020, some reports of him using some racial slurs came out. He took a pay cut and he lost that head coach in waiting title. But then a couple of years later, he got it back. And there's a good quote here. Kyle Whittingham spoke on Sunday, and a good quote here from Matt Marshall with the Orlando Sentinel. And Kyle Whittingham says, "I signed a 5-year contract. I made a mistake in Utah. They started asking me about retirement, and I started answering questions and giving my own thing. I don't think I'm that old. I'm 66, but it's not that old. I feel like I got enough energy and juice to see this through." And, if you're Utah, we talked to Kyle Whittingham at Big 12 Media Day last year. You and I did. And it was very clear he kind of wanted to retire after last season, but didn't because of how badly it went. And if you talk to people who know Whittingham, he has talked about wanting to spend more time with his grandkids and his kids and stuff like that. So, like, that is real. I think he's just been kind of indecisive about it all and just kind of has had the push-pull of, when do you really give this up? Because coaches usually really don't want to give it up. But I think if you're Utah, so Kyle Whittingham steps down, I think 2 days after Sharon Moore was fired. But nobody really thought this was a possibility. He wasn't at the top of the list. It was Caleb.
Yeah, it made sense on paper, but I didn't know that I didn't think we would necessarily get there.
And I don't think Utah thought that was going to happen either. And so not only do you have this happen, but if he is taking Jason Beck and who knows who else with him to Michigan, you've suddenly put Morgan Scalley in a really difficult spot. Who he hasn't had his introductory press conference, by the way. They were going to wait till after the bowl game because Kyle Whittingham was going to coach that. And so now you're not really introducing him as head coach to everybody until a bunch of bad stuff has happened. And that puts him in a tough spot. I think that puts Mark Harlan, the AD, in a tough spot. You know, they just signed working on this private equity deal with a bunch of money coming in where you're going to have to win to kind of make that all worth it. And so this could really be a, like, maybe this isn't the exit you wanted. It could really set things up in a bad way moving forward there. So we'll see.
And it's worth too on the age thing, Chris. You know, obviously a lot's been made of that, and Kyle Whittingham's been around forever. He's got a little more gray. You know, he's 17 months older than Kurt Signetti.
Yep. And he's right around the same age as Willie Fritz, who just won 10 games again with Houston. Well, like, I'm just saying, like,
some guys read older than others. I think Kyle Whittingham reads a lot older than Kurt Signetti, but he's not that old. Willie Fritz, God bless him. We love Willie Fritz, but he reads a little old.
Willie Fritz has been 70 years old for 30 years, if we're being honest. That's just how he is. And obviously Bill Belichick is 72 or something like that.
Again, that's I think thing.
I think my biggest question though is that Kyle Whittingham hasn't coached at a job like Michigan. He's pretty much only been at Utah. The expectations here are compete for the national championships and beat Ohio State. You know, you could have a down year at Utah and you're fine, especially because of how long he'd been there. There will be a point where, like, everybody's grateful for Kyle Whittingham and landing in the spot and all this stuff at Michigan. That's going to wear off at some point. And what happens if the offense if you have Bryce Underwood back, is not going the way that you wanted necessarily? And can he adapt? Can he handle that pressure? Can he recruit at that level? Because everybody's going to be recruiting against Michigan saying, hey, this coach isn't going to be there very long. You don't want to go there. And he hadn't recruited at that level at Utah because it was Utah.
That pitch doesn't work as well in the portal era, though.
That's true. It's true. Like, a lot of kids aren't going necessarily a place for a coach because they may leave after a year anyway. You
don't need every coach always complain. They're like, I need at least a 4-year contract so that if I get those questions on the recruiting show, I can just point to it and say, my contract says I'm going to be here to the end of your career, even though,
which they do.
You know, they knew. Yeah. And now, you know, that just doesn't work as well. You know, we've seen a lot of like fantasy football and college football since the portal era has come. And well, what would happen if this player was in this system? This is kind of like, you know, the what if Bill Snyder had taken over Florida sort of question. It's like Utah's a good program and they've accomplished a lot, but they're not a blue blood. Michigan, indisputably a blue blood. Kyle Whittingham, indisputably one of the sport's most accomplished, somehow underrated coaches that seems to always get the most out of what he has. Like that Utah team a couple years ago where he's playing like Sione Vaki at quarterback, where they had like 8, you know, Cam Rising is banged up. Like they have basically no quarterback, no offense. I think they still won 8 games or something that year. Like I really am curious how this goes because I have always wondered like what would happen if Bill Snyder had gotten like a blue-blooded job. He never really was that interested in it. I don't think Kyle Whittingham was either, but things happen. And I'm curious to see how this plays out.
What happens when you're dealing with a 5-star recruit who wants $1 million and stuff like that? Like that is the world you kind of have to be in. And it will help to have the Michigan money cannon. I mean, we know Michigan has the money. That's certainly not an issue. So is Kyle Whittingham with more resources? Will that work? I mean, on paper you think it is, but is it just a different kind of job in a different situation? Who knows how long the AD Ward Manuel is going to be there too? They may have some change over the next year or so. So I think I grade this like an A- higher, like as good as you could possibly do. You can see the upside, but there are questions, I think, as well. And we'll see if Bryce Underwood stays. I mean, for Michigan, the thought was going into the offseason, hold Bryce Underwood, spend as much money as you can to get him some wide receivers, and you're good. And so how has that changed with this new system? And another credit to Kyle Whittingham, by the way, he did like go into the portal and get guys and get a new offensive coordinator to change things up. He wasn't a guy like stuck in his ways and he wouldn't adapt and that kind of stuff. He did last year, and Utah had a really good year. So I think that's all positive. And we'll see. Anything else on that?
No, it's gonna be interesting to watch. I like his upside, a lot more. I was always kind of not sure about Sharon Moore before we kind of knew all the stuff that was going on off the field, and it seemed like that program was not pointed in the right direction. And the ceiling is pretty high for Kyle Whittingham at Michigan.
Elsewhere, Ohio promoted defense coordinator John Hauser to head coach. He replaces Brian Smith, who was fired over the relationship with an undergrad student and some drinking allegations that he is threatening legal action over after he was fired for cause. But this is the third straight internal promotion for Ohio. So Frank Solich had a great run there. He retires. They promote Tim Albin. Tim Albin leaves for Charlotte. They promote Brian Smith. Smith gets fired. Now they promote John Hauser. So this strategy has kind of been working for Ohio, and he led them to a Frisco Bowl win over UNLV and really shut down that UNLV offense, which was as good as a job interview as you could have. So that's what Ohio does. And after that, every head coaching job is filled at the moment. I say at the moment because it will almost certainly not be it. There is always a couple of late surprises or two. Someone could get fired for reasons we don't expect. Someone could step down and take an assistant. G5 coach could step down, take an assistant job somewhere. Could have guys look at the NFL. We know the New York Giants and other NFL teams are interested in Marcus Freeman, head coach at Notre Dame. Wouldn't be surprised if NFL teams are looking at Steve Sarkisian, who's at Texas. So technically every job is filled now here in late December, but it's almost a guarantee that something is going to change over the next month or two, or at least before the season happens every single year. So don't be surprised if something surprising, I guess, happens. And with that, it's time to get into the big quarterfinal college football playoff preview. And to do that, we go into the game previews.
This is for all the Tostitos.
Wednesday night, New Year's Eve, I will be there at the Goodyear Cotton Bowl, Miami, 10 seed versus Ohio State, the 2 seed. David, do you know what Goodyear is?
Yeah, they have the Michelin Man, right?
We do. Also, after the show, let me tell you something about Goodyear. We had a conversation about Goodyear last year that didn't end up happening.
Did we?
May end up happening this year. We'll talk about it later.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
This.
Well, Chris, is your wife a big New Year's Eve person?
No, she's not even going to be here. She's going somewhere with friends. So.
All right. Well, there you go. I have had to cover a couple of these bowl games. Your Michigan State Spartans, I watched them get shut out by Alabama on New Year's Eve one time.
Mm-hmm.
But I've had to do my fair share of New Year's Eves away from home. My wife is not thrilled. We will be together on New Year's Eve this year, so she's very happy about that. But I was curious if you were having to explain some things.
So Ohio State, Miami, a rematch of the famous 2002 national championship game. This game is at 7:30 Eastern, ESPN. I will most certainly likely be in the AT&T Stadium press box when the ball drops. If not, maybe driving home. We'll see. But we have Ohio State comes in with maybe the best defense in the country. They have not allowed 20 points in a game this year.
We'll see.
Maybe. Offensively, Ryan Day said he has taken over play calling from Brian Hartline, who is also preparing to be the USF head coach. And, we haven't seen the Buckeyes since they put up a kind of meh performance against Indiana in the Big Ten championship game, where both teams missed a field goal, but Indiana made enough plays and won that game. And on the Ohio State side, I look at their big games. Texas scored 14 points. Indiana, 10 points. Michigan, you got to, I think, like 27 points. That's like, okay. This is not an offense that has been lighting it up, especially against talented teams. They were under 2.5 yards per carry in both of those games as well. But on the bright side, they are 6th in sacks allowed per game. They protect Julian Sand, and they're number 2 in the country on third downs, with Sand having ridiculous numbers. Miami, coming off of a 10-3 win over Texas A&M in the first round, played very well in the trenches. found Mark Fletcher a pretty good running game. Carson Beck did just enough. They weren't explosive, but they weren't. The offensive numbers aren't as bad as like the game felt. Really, the problem was they just went 3 for 12 on third down. So, first off, David, do you think both these teams, I guess, can win the national championship? Forgot to do that.
Yeah. Do
I
we
think so,
want to talk Ohio State here briefly?
Let's do it.
It seems insane to me that this team has played 13 games and like I'm still not sure how good they actually are. Like the idea that they're head and shoulders above every team in the country is not insane. I don't think that it makes sense based on what I've seen with my eyes. But we still don't know what this team is like made of. You know, they didn't I wouldn't say they were exposed by Indiana, but I want to see like if this team goes down 10-0 in the first quarter. Like, can you stay composed? Can, with a little bit of pressure, Julian Sayin rally you back? Like the schedule was what the schedule was, and they deserve credit for not playing with their food and being dominant when they needed to be dominant. Texas game, like Texas is a good team, not a great team. Indiana, a great team. They lost that game, of course. I still don't really know what this team is. And I think Miami could show us that because I don't think Miami is an elite team. But if Ohio State gives a B+ game and Miami plays well, they will lose this game. And so I really want to know more about who this Ohio State team is, which, like I said, we're sitting here. This game is going to be played on the last day of the year. And I still don't entirely know what this Ohio State team is. Am I being a hater? What am I here?
Well, we know it's a lot different team from last year in terms of a lot of the guys who have gone off to the NFL. We do know that they have maybe 3 of the 10 best players in the country in Jeremiah Smith, a receiver, Caleb Downs at safety, Arvell Reese, linebacker. Like, those are probably all top 10 type of guys. And Julian Sayin's numbers have been fantastic. Even in the Indiana game, his numbers are very efficient. But his team has not run the ball very well, especially in the big games. And the offense has kind of been hit and miss at times, and the defense has been great, but they also haven't played very many offenses of note. I think, if you were to tell me Jeremiah Smith goes off in this game and has 170 yards, 2 touchdowns, like, yeah, it's possible, but it's also not the same team it was a year ago. And I think if you look at, Miami, like, here's what I'm watching for in this game. First off, who wins the line of scrimmage? Because Miami handled the line of scrimmage against Texas A&M. They ran the ball well, 6.3 yards per carry, didn't allow many. I think it might have been 1 or 2 sacks they allowed in that game. And they got pressure on Marcel Reed when they needed to, but also didn't blitz a ton because they were daring him to throw it. They will probably have to have a different game plan. You're probably going to have to try to get pressure on Julian Sayin. But that's where it starts, I think, for any football game, really. But it's one where I'm going in not thinking Ohio State's definitely going to win the battle in the trenches. And I think Indiana was even, if not better, against them in the trenches. And if you get Ohio State off center a little bit, and Julian Sayin doesn't have the time necessarily, you get that offense off, and they're not just going to make up for it by running the ball. I think that's one of my questions.
Yeah, I think last year, this Ohio State team, it felt like all year they just were not playing anywhere close to their ceiling. And the Michigan loss felt very self-inflicted. It was like all of your strength is on the edges, but they wanted to run right into Michigan's strength. And then once they sort of shook themselves out of that, you watch them in the playoff and you're like, I don't think anybody's going to beat this team. Like, this team looks unbelievable. And we haven't seen that team against really good teams. Like, Tennessee last year was a very solid team, and Ohio State embarrassed them. In Oregon, I'm still in awe of what Ohio State did in that Rose Bowl game. They were just so dominant, and then obviously, beat Texas. I think that was the Cotton Bowl.
Yep, semifinal Cotton Bowl. Yep.
So, does this team have that gear? Is a big question. I don't think that they do, but can you bludgeon your way with defense and efficient passing and some timely catches from Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate to get back to the championship game? I think Ohio State's still the best team, but like, how far is that gap? Is it narrow? Are they just equals
Yeah.
with Indiana and with some of these other teams at the top?
So-
like if they go toe to toe with Georgia, can they? I don't
So-
really know.
The total on this game, the over-under, 42.5. That is low. I think this is going to
Yeah.
be a low-scoring game. I think
I do
both of
too.
these teams are going to struggle to move the ball. I think it's going to be a war in the trenches. Miami, like Carson Beck was 14 for 20 against Texas A&M. He was perfectly fine. The problem was Miami went 3 for 12 on third down. That's ultimately what stopped a lot of those drives. They also missed a bunch of field goals. This has not been an explosive offense. Like Malachi Toney's great, but this is not this is not a team that's going long on you a lot of the times. And I'm guessing Ohio State's probably going to play up a bit and kind of try to dare Miami to see if they can hit those explosive plays because they haven't been able to. But Miami's offensive line and defensive line all year been among the best in the country. Ruben Bain is going to be had 3 sacks, I think, in the A&M game. He's going to be somebody to watch for sure. But Ohio State, a 9.5 point favorite in a game that has an over under of 42.5 that's a lot. Like they think Ohio State's going to win comfortably in an otherwise ugly game.
Well, if they play up to their capability, they can. But what is that capability? Again, this goes back to the weakness in the Big Ten. And that Texas game, it felt like a big game at the time. It was a big game, but it wasn't like, Texas was preseason like top 5, weren't they? But like Texas was not one of the 5
1 versus 2,
they were one
I
of the
think it was.
15 best teams, but that's about it. And then that might be kind of generous considering how they
Yeah.
played on the road. But I think we're gonna learn a lot about Ohio State in this game, and to me, that's what I'm looking forward to the most, because they can show us like, no, we are that great. Because I just think there's so many. The Big Ten and their schedule has not allowed them to really offer that up. And then the Indiana game, I mean, they lost, so it is what it is.
So the other thing is 2 things I look for in every single college football game: turnovers and can you finish drives. And Ohio State is 35th in red zone touchdown percentage. So like not great offensively. But they haven't turned the ball over very much. Julian Sain's been very careful with the ball. Is this a Carson Beck multiple interception type of game that sets up Ohio State with some short fields and makes the Buckeyes go? Like that is always in play as a possibility with Carson Beck. So like I'm looking for who can win the line of scrimmage. Can either of these teams get something going there? Or is this just going to be both defensive fronts are dominating and nobody has time to pass and nobody can run the ball and it really gets ugly? Looking for that, looking for turnovers for the reasons I said. Can Carson Beck take care of the ball? And then special teams. Ohio State's got a really good kicker, even though he missed a big one in the Big Ten championship game. Miami's had kicking problems, as we saw. Those little things can add up. So anything else in this game you're looking for? Or do you want to make
No, I mean, Miami, I think, could be there. Miami could play their way into this. 9.5 feels hot, but it also feels like it could be 17-3 in the second quarter, and you're like, Miami is cooked. Like, I think this is definitely, like, if you go down double digits, this is not the team you want to try and climb back on. So I think you got to get off to a good start. If you're Miami, control it early and put some pressure on Ohio State that hasn't faced a ton this year and test that. I think that early game script is going to be really, really important. We'll kind of see what Shannon Dawson has there because if it's 10-0, when Ohio State's had the ball twice and you've had it once, like, that's a bad place to be for the Canes. So we'll see. I'm excited for this one though.
What's your pick?
I'm gonna go reluctantly Miami. I mean, I've been questioning Ohio State.
Straight up or cover?
No, I'll go Miami to cover.
Okay.
I think they can get off to a good start and turn this thing into kind of a fist fight. I think Ohio State wins it and survives, but I reserve the right to not allow you to gloat if Ohio State wins this game like 31-10, because I think that's possible too.
Like, I think back to the semifinal I covered, Ohio State, Texas, and that was a game in which it felt like Ohio State was dominating the game. And then before you know it, Texas is driving to try to tie the game late.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the fumble and Jack Sawyer returns for a touchdown and that's your ball game. So like it could be a game that like stays close, even if it shouldn't. I'm going to say Ohio State wins, but Miami covers as well. 9.5's a lot for a game. I just don't think there's going to be that many points.
Yeah.
Now, if Carson Beck goes out and throws 3 picks, which is very much on the table, then all bets are off. But should be a really interesting game. I'm so excited for all 4 of these games. It's weird that this one has the highest point spread, and yet you feel like Miami could win this game.
Yeah,
and I think that's good.
I feel like all these games could go a number of different directions. I don't feel confident about any of these. Maybe just one, which we'll get to later. But
all right, on Thursday, early noon Eastern, ESPN, the Capital One Orange Bowl, number 5 seed Oregon versus number 4 seed Texas Tech. Oregon's a 2.5 point favorite. David, can either of these teams win the national championship?
Yeah, they can.
I'm a little bit.
Have we ever had an Orange Bowl during the day?
Well, that the Florida State Georgia one was. That massacre.
But wasn't it like 2:30? That game felt. Watching that game felt wrong. I turned it off after
this is usually a night game, right? But it does it not often during the day. But
last year, because the early games for the quarterfinals were indoors, if I'm not mistaken. I know the early game was the Peach Bowl, the Texas Arizona State game. So you don't really think about it when it's indoors. But I think it's gonna be weird watching an outdoor day game. Not in the Orange Bowl, obviously.
For the second time, a big noon day game, which we got in the first round too, with Texas A&M, Miami. So Texas Tech here. Let's we haven't talked about them in a bit. So if you for their story here, they spent $12 million on the portal, really beefed up the offensive and defensive lines, stuck with a lot of their skill guys like quarterback Baron Morton. They've won every game this year by 22 points or more, other than the Arizona State loss, where they were playing with their backup quarterback, Hammond. Baron Morton, people feel like he's kind of the weak link of the offense, or at least the weakest part of it, but he's only thrown 4 interceptions. He's 12th in passes of 30-plus yards. So he's been efficient and explosive when needed to be. It's a defense that doesn't blitz much and gets pressure. They're the number 1 rush defense, number 1 in takeaways and turnover margin. They've had multiple takeaways in 6 straight games. Number 4 in fewest big plays allowed. This is like the new money coming to college football. It's Cody Campbell, a regent at the school, oil billionaire, former player at Texas Tech, under Mike Leach, decided we need to do what these other teams are doing and spend big on getting players. And they did. And they hit on them. Because remember, when we talked to Joey McGuire and that Texas Tech group at Media Day, they knew the expectation was you have to get to the Big 12 championship game, at least. And they welcomed that pressure because Texas Tech had never been there. This is the greatest season in Texas Tech football history. Really.
Yes.
Already. And you win the conference championship, their first outright conference title since 1955. They hit on pretty much all those guys in the portal. Credit James Blanchard, the GM, for identifying the right talent. And Joey McGuire deserves credit for keeping everybody focused on the main thing. If you go 9-3 this year, maybe he gets fired or something like that. Other coaches were like, I'll take that Texas Tech job if you give me that kind of money. And it's important to know too,
you hit on it. I do think this team does deserve credit for the evals. I trust this group a lot. Joey McGuire, good talent evaluator. James Blanchard, you're going to be hard pressed to find anybody with more respect in the recruiting world. Him and Courtney Morgan, they might not make as much as Mike Lombardi does, but they have a lot of respect from people in that world as people who just understand what makes good players.
And Notre Dame,
those guys.
Notre Dame tried to hire Blanchard from Texas Tech. He stayed, which was good for him. And for all the talk about Texas and the money they're spending, this is not the most expensive roster in college football, by the way.
Yeah.
There are schools in this playoff that are spending the same, if not more. Texas Tech just got up to that level of those other teams. And so
they're in a league of their own in the Big 12.
Yes. And that's the question here. You dominated the Big 12. You dominated BYU twice. You didn't play really anybody in the non-conference. So what does it look like when you get into a game with another really good opponent from another league? And that brings us to Oregon, whom David went and saw in the first round. They beat James Madison 51-34, a game that was 48-13 at one point, and Oregon seemed to they left a lot of starters in, but they kind of let their foot off the gas for a bit. Oregon, the number 2 rush defense in the country, 5.9 yards per carry, number 4 in yards per play. They get explosive plays and all that kind of stuff. David, do you put any stock, first off, in the second half of JMU, that game? Dan Lanning was very not happy about JMU coming back to cover the point spread and all that stuff. Do you buy much into that? Because I don't.
No, I think it's an effort thing. I think it's the other team is still playing on the biggest stage that they will ever see. That part of it, at least in a JMU jersey, we'll see what happens with a lot of those guys if they end up at UCLA. Our guy Wayne Knight, Alonzo Barnett, both in the portal. And then, I think there's just a motivation aspect of when you're up 48-13. I get why Dan Lanning's not happy. That's probably the right approach. But also, they were emptying the playbook. I just don't. The things that allowed that to happen, I don't think will be factors the rest of the way in the playoff. So I don't put a lot of stock in it.
And speaking of motivation, it feels like Oregon all year has been motivated by what happened to them in the quarterfinal last year when they got run out of the Rose Bowl. In David's eyes, it made the season completely worthless, even though they won a Big Ten championship. But I think that's. I'm curious what that experience factor means here. Oregon has been here before. Now, Dante Moore wasn't the starting quarterback last year, but they've been in a quarterfinal. They've already played a first-round game. Texas Tech hasn't played in a month almost, going back to the Big 12 championship game. Is there rust on Texas Tech's part? Is there big eyes because we're here in the quarterfinal part? This is out in the Orange Bowl. It's not in the Cotton Bowl where we thought it could be. Do you think that's a factor at all potentially? Does it take a minute for Texas Tech?
That stuff has been that's hard to predict. I don't think so. It's hard to know how much a team shows rust or not until the game starts. I don't think there's a lot of it's tough to have any predictive elements to that. You sort of know it when you see it. So I'll say no, just because I think this is a good coaching staff, and Joey McGuire has done a pretty unbelievable job of keeping this team motivated and focused throughout the season when there were a lot of chances for them to kind of get bored when you're waking up on Saturday and you're a 20-point favorite at home. And when you still get your guys to play well in those situations, I think that's in some ways harder than other ways. But I think that Oregon piece of it is interesting because it's one thing if you lose the Rose Bowl. It's another thing to be 13-0 and a Big Ten champion. And your season's over when you're trotting into halftime. I can't imagine how that feels. And I think that trying to avoid how anything close to that is a powerful motivator. And Dan Lanning, college football's favorite psycho, I'm very curious to see how that plays out in Miami. I really can't wait for this game. Very excited to see it. These are two really, really good rosters and two programs with a ton to prove both this year and from a 30,000 foot view. Oregon still hasn't climbed the mountaintop. They've been there twice and lost both times. Once to Ohio State, once to Auburn. And so that championship has been elusive since Phil Knight, sort of first started cracking this, moving 2 decades plus. So I'm really excited for this ball game.
That's an interesting point. Oregon is not respected, I think, by the SEC fans and such because a couple times they've gotten to that big stage and fallen flat on their face. And until you win a title, you will not fully have that respect. And if you lose to a Texas Tech, who's kind of doing the new Oregon, that would be interesting. I'm curious, by the way, if people who kind of casually watch college football tune in to Texas Tech for the first time and are surprised that this isn't a Mike Leach pass it all the time, that no, this is a team that relies on its really, really good defense. It's not the Texas Tech that most people are used to. Oregon, by the way, Oregon's favored 2.5 points in this game. Here's what I'm looking for in this game, the matchups. Can Texas Tech stop the run and get pressure with 4? This is Oregon's number 2 rush offense against Texas Tech's number 1 rush defense. That's where it's going to start. Oregon was not able to run the ball well against Indiana, the game that they lost. Against Washington, a game that was a bit close. There's that. And what is the health, obviously, of some of Oregon's receivers who didn't really play in the JMU game? What do we know about that? And Oregon, by the way, and on the flip side, Oregon does not get many TFLs. They're 106th in TFLs. They're not usually putting the opponent behind the ball a lot. So can Oregon get Texas Tech behind the chains and put it in the hands of Baron Morton? We'll see. And the other thing, can Texas Tech finish drives? They are 97th. They are 97th in red zone touchdown percentage, Texas Tech. The only reason those BYU games were even as close as they were was because Texas Tech could not finish in the end zone. That has been a problem all season. That is something you do not want to do in a game like this. So basically, can both these teams, can they stop the run without having to overcommit? And then both these quarterbacks are good at taking care of the ball. So if there's a key turnover or two in a spot, but fascinating matchup for sure.
Very much so. I'm excited. I mean, you already mentioned it. Like these games, like really, every single one of them is must-see TV.
They're teams that we don't see play each other very much.
Well, we did see Texas Tech and Oregon play like twice, but that's okay.
Yeah, but like when was that? That was a while ago.
That was the
right?
Tyler Shuck Bowl in 23. That was a great game.
Yeah, I guess that was a couple years ago. But that was a different, very different Texas Tech.
Very much so.
As well. So, all right, what's your pick? Oregon 2.5 point favorite.
I'm gonna reluctantly go Texas Tech because I think that they've been a sleeper for the national championship all year. Great teams beat the heck out of okay teams. And I also think, like, we've talked a lot about Ohio State because they have that top end talent. I think the second class to middle class in the Big 12 is just as good, if not better, than the Big 10s is. And Texas Tech has been dominant against those teams all year. And so, the Texas Tech schedule stuff is fair. Like BYU has been the best team they played, but they dominated that game. And good teams beat the heck out of average to okay teams. So I'm going to go with Texas Tech to get this win.
Here's a question. Does Texas Tech need to win this game to legitimize itself in the eyes of people outside the Big 12? Like if you run roughshod through the Big 12, but then lose to, the third place, fourth place Big 10 team, does that make people say, well, your Big 12 still, again, not at this level?
No, I mean, it would help, obviously, but I think that's something that's done over time. There's not one game that can do it. You have to sustain, and I think they'll be able to sustain. Money helps, but one game doesn't do that. 5 years of being in the quarters, being in the semis, winning the Big 12, 2-3 times. The next that's what legitimizes you, not one win. So no, I don't think so. I mean, I don't think anything Texas Tech can do this year will legitimize them in the eyes of skeptics because they just haven't done it. You have to do it over and over and over again before people are like, man, these guys keep showing up and they play tough and they hit hard and they're a tough out every single time. That's how you win that respect. 1 year, I don't want to say anybody can do it in 1 year, but like think about Washington, like they get to the playoff under Chris Peterson. They were okay.
Well, they lost that game. I'm saying if Texas Tech wins this game, I think.
Well, but my point is that Washington gets back. They win that. They beat Texas in that crazy semifinal game, the Sugar Bowl that I covered. That was a great game. But like people don't see Washington fundamentally different because they've kind of fallen off. But if you stay and you show up here every single year, like I think that changes how you're seen.
I think if you win this, maybe it might be the story of the quarterfinals. If Texas Tech wins this, and we say, "Whoa, is there not a new blue blood, but like there is power outside of the Big 10 and the SEC, and Texas Tech has put the world on notice." I'm going to go Texas Tech.
The conference part of it, maybe, yeah, I could see that, maybe.
I'm going to go Texas Tech as well. Oregon, like I've loved their upside. I haven't loved their play on the year. Like the Iowa game was pretty ugly. The Washington game was maybe closer than it should have been. The USC game for a while was closer than it should have been. You lost at home to 10 by Indiana. And you're still pretty banged up, I think. Like if some of those guys, DeCorian Moore and Gary Bryant, like if they're good to go, I think the ceiling for this Oregon team, when healthy, is the national championship. But I haven't been like that in love with them yet. I'm going to go the defense here. I'm going to go Texas Tech. This is going to be a fun game, man. The tougher team is going to win this game.
Yeah.
And that is pretty awesome. All right, moving forward to the Rose Bowl presented by Prudential. Number 9 seed Alabama versus number 1 seed Indiana, 4:00 Eastern, ESPN. Remember, this game has moved up an hour or two because to not make the Sugar Bowl go too long, which means the sunset will be later than normal.
Oh no. Oh no.
We've thought it's possible it might be late in the game or maybe even after the game, depending on how fast the game goes. So
are people going to be okay?
Keep an eye on that.
Oh my goodness.
This game, Indiana, as we know, undefeated, number 1 in the country, previously the losingest team in college football history until Curt Cignetti comes in and does one of the most amazing coaching jobs in the history of college football. They've got the Heisman Trophy winner in Fernando Mendoza, the quarterback. And they're just good at everything. Like I went through the statistical profile of this team. They're number 1 in third down offense, number 2 in third down defense, number 3 in yards per play on offense, number 2 in tackles for loss per game on defense. They've only committed 8 turnovers. There's nothing that they don't do well. And I think for all the talk of Indiana and Curt Cignetti, and he brought the JMU guys and that stuff, Indiana has invested at a level that I don't think we talk about enough. Like their roster is also over $20 million. Like I wouldn't be surprised if Indiana, Texas Tech are in the same range of money, but one of them kind of gets looked at differently. One doesn't. I think Indiana spent a lot of that money on retention and keeping guys last year, but they also added Mendoza from Cal. They added Pat Coogan, the center from Notre Dame. They've added some other guys who are starters. They've continued to up the salaries. They've kept their coordinators. They may do it once again. Shanahan and Bryant Haynes, really good staff continuity. It feels a lot like what Dabo was doing at Clemson, 10 years ago. And one of the best stories in college football. Alabama, them. They've won all the national championships. They opened the year with the loss to Florida State, had a really good middle of the season, a bad back half of the season, snuck into the playoff, found themselves down 17-0 to Oklahoma in the first round, came back to win. David, your opening thoughts on this matchup. Also, I guess first, can either of these teams win the national championship?
Yes. But that
really
is a way to talk about Alabama because good Alabama can win it. And this is kind of the crux of what Alabama has lost. And the hallmark of Nick Saban's program at Alabama was consistency. You knew what you were going to get when Alabama took the field. Under Kalen DeBoer, you don't really know what you're going to get. And that's not so much a Kalen DeBoer issue as a college football issue and Alabama missing the greatest coach that we've ever seen in the sport, in part because of that consistency. Even between games, you mentioned this, like getting down 17-0 to a not that great Oklahoma team, but they were able to climb back. Again, this is one of the most talented teams in the country. There is upside there to win the whole thing. We saw them in the middle of the season get red hot, beat 4 consecutive top 25 teams. A couple of those teams fell off later in the season, but I think 2 or 3 of those games were on the road as well. So this team has a ton of upside. They're a team that you don't necessarily want to see across the other side, but they're also a team capable of playing really bad football. We've seen it. They get up on Auburn. They let a really average Auburn team, which had Hugh Freeze been fired at that point? I think he had.
Yes.
I forget. Yes. But they let a pretty average, not great Auburn team climb back in the game. Again, you fall behind Oklahoma. They just have not played well for the last 6 weeks. But it's a little bit like that Ohio State team last year. Obviously not to that degree. But when they start clicking, if Ty Simpson gets hot, that defensive front starts to cook a little bit. Like they get scary in a hurry, but you just don't know which Alabama team you're going to see. And so this is a game where anything can happen too. Like, from a betting perspective, that Alabama money line is like pretty interesting. I don't know what that would be, probably in the 200s, 300s maybe. But like, this is going to be a great game. And Indiana has been as consistent as just about anybody. And they have kind of looked more like what we got used to seeing from Alabama, quite frankly.
I think the funniest part out of all of this, Alabama is number 2 in 24/7 sports team talent rankings. they have 14 former 5-star players, 50 former 4-star players. Indiana is number 72 in team talent with 0 5-stars and 7 4-stars. They are 3 spots ahead of Toledo, 4 spots ahead of Texas State, 5 spots ahead of Georgia State. And yet, they are here undefeated, number 1 in the country, and a 6.5-point favorite over the Alabama Crimson Tide. Like, what? That is an unbelievable testament to development and culture,
evaluation,
and getting the most out of your guys, evaluation, all of that stuff. And so, notable for Indiana, by the way, they will be without Stephen Daly, really good defensive lineman. He's injured, probably out for the year. Got hurt in the Big Ten championship game or celebrating it. It's a little bit unclear. But still, Alabama, very inconsistent this year. Look, here are some of these numbers that you would never associate with Alabama. Yards per rush, 125th. Tackles for loss per game, 56th. Sacks allowed per game, 86th. They're 108th in field goal percentage. Can't really make kicks either. So, like, it's a team that on paper has really got a lot of holes. And I think you saw that in the back half of the year. You want to talk about just not getting the most out of the talent. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, Alabama probably doesn't win that game if Lazier Brooks, their wide receiver, doesn't step up against Oklahoma. You know, and you got Jeremy Bernard, their receiver, the tight end, Josh Cuevas, who's been banged up.
Really good player.
He plays. So, like, Ty Simpson, still possible first-round pick based on some mock drafts I was watching. But I think what I'm looking for here, can Indiana win the battle in the trenches? And can they do it without Daly? Because Alabama flipped in that Oklahoma game. They were not getting any pressure on John Mateer, and they couldn't block and keep time for Ty Simpson. And then in the second half, they just did, you know, and so, like, that's a credit to Kane Womack and the adjustments he made. Can Alabama get that pressure, and can they protect Ty Simpson? That's what, for Alabama to have a chance, you have to do that. And then I think turnovers. Both of these teams, neither of these teams turned the ball over very much, but it was a big part of Alabama. Special teams and turnovers really helped that comeback. You get the pick six and all that kind of stuff. So those are two things I think I'm really looking forward to in terms of the matchup.
I think the biggest, you know, you mentioned the offensive or the line of scrimmage. I mean, I think Indiana is going to win that. And I think hearing Nick Saban talk about this Alabama team is interesting. He's obviously very careful with what he says and how he says, especially as it comes to Alabama. But I think seeing the lack of physicality, mostly on offense, but to some degree on defense, the disgust comes through from Nick Saban when he's talking about this Alabama team. Like, I know they're missing. I know it was what it was, but they got pushed around bad against Georgia. And I would argue that Indiana has been better on the line of scrimmage than that Georgia team. I think there is a world in which Indiana wins this game like 31-7, something like that. I think that's definitely possible. I think Alabama can win. Like I said, if they get hot, they get hot. But Indiana has a real ability to make a already kind of one-dimensional Alabama team that's not even great as a throwing team pretty one-dimensional. They're going to need Ryan Williams to snap out of whatever's going on with him. They're going to need Bernard and Brooks and Cuevas to make plays because it's going to be on Simpson. Like, they're not going to be able to run the ball in this game, period. Like, if they do, it would have had to have been an Angels in the outfield Space Jam type of situation to allow that, because the Alabama team that we've seen all year has not been able to do that against hardly anyone. I don't know why they would switch it up against Indiana, even without Stephen Daly. So that is, to me, what will be the story of this game.
Like I think everybody kind of still doubted the legitimacy of Indiana, even despite the Oregon win, until they beat Ohio State.
Yes.
You know, this is not last year's Indiana team at all, you know, that would play a good team and start to really struggle. This team is a lot better, and we've seen that. But is there a part of you that sees all those 5 stars on one side and not on the other side, and makes you think, like, can that ultimate, like,
No, I think I can explain
talent
things in
went out.
retrospect. No. I think I
Mhm.
can explain things in retrospect. Like Alabama can win this game. This is one of the reasons why I'm excited about this round is all 8 teams can win. Alabama can win this game. The problem is we've been watching Alabama all season long. And like, has there been a time at any point this season when Alabama has looked like truly scary? They've been good. They beat a
Like,
bunch of
even
good teams in the middle of the year,
the
but
win,
they
but those
haven't
wins.
shown up and just like blown people up.
But they beat Georgia by 3. You beat Vandy by like less than 10. You beat Missouri by 3. The only blowout I think was Tennessee, but that included a pick 6 and some kind of weird stuff on there. So like, yeah, they even those big wins they haven't dominated. So this is going to be so much for the narrative. Like, your Big Ten champ, you're Indiana. You can't lose to the 4th, 5th place. I guess technically they were second.
We mentioned it on our glossing over preview. This is a narrative Super Bowl. Like, if Indiana wins, I'm excited to see the SEC fans. Well, I mean, Alabama, this isn't
Yeah, we're gonna say
Alabama. They didn't care about this game.
Is it stars? Is it stars matter? If Alabama ultimately wins that game, it's like pluckiness can only take you so far. I don't know. All right, what's your pick?
I'm gonna take Indiana to win and cover. Like I said, I think Alabama can win this game, but I'm going to trust who these teams have been for the first, 13, 14 games of the season. And Indiana has looked like an elite team basically every week. So I don't know why that would change now. You can say 6.5 points is a lot. Just one score. So I'm going to take Indiana to win and cover.
I'm going to go Indiana as well. This will be the biggest game in program history. It's already been the best season in program history. And if you add a Rose Bowl win over Alabama to that, like there will almost maybe never be anything topping that. And
until Indiana wins like a regular season game over Purdue in basketball, and then that would top this.
Well, so that's the thing. Like, they've shown up for football, and the investment has been there for football in a way that, again, I don't think people fully realize. Like, they committed to football in a way that you needed to, and then hired the perfect coach to do it. And that's what it is. I'm going to go Indiana wins as well. I think there's a real chance Indiana wins this game by like a lot.
I do too.
We spend the fourth quarter like just being in shock at how good this team.
Don't be in shock. There's a 31-7 in here,
dude. It's
Alabama
Indiana.
Has not looked. I know,
Indiana.
but like,
you got to understand. Growing up,
take the logos off.
Take the logos off. You don't know who's who. They're the same colors and the same uniforms and all that stuff. It's gonna be tough. Growing up in Big Ten country, where like Indiana was a team where when you got your schedule, you're like, all right, that's going to be a win. And for that team to be here now is just truly incomprehensible.
This is disrespectful to Antoine Randall, Tevin Coleman. I mean, this is
okay. All right, last one. The All-State Sugar Bowl, number 6 seed Ole Miss versus number 3 seed Georgia, 8:00 Eastern, ESPN. They played earlier this season. It's a rematch.
Yeah,
Georgia.
This is the least interesting quarter to me, mostly because we've already seen it.
Georgia won 43-35 in a game that had 9 straight touchdown drives at one point. Georgia never punted. They finally got some stops in the fourth quarter, and that won them the game. Notable in that game, Trinidad Chambliss only 19 for 36 passing, and Kwan Lacey was held to 31 rushing yards. Georgia, they were not great first half of the year. Probably got lucky to beat Tennessee, lost to Alabama, struggled against Auburn and Florida. They really finished strong, beat Texas, beat Alabama pretty handily.
Defense has picked up. That's been what's fueled this, I think.
Other than the Georgia Tech game, Gunnar Stockton has been lights out the second half of the year. Ole Miss coming first round, they beat Tulane 41-10 in another rematch for them. Tulane was able to move the ball but not finish drives. You do wonder about Kwan Lacey's health. He got knocked out of that game a couple times with like a shoulder or collarbone thing. Not sure what it was. But considering we know these teams and that they've played each other, David, what do you think?
I think Gunnar Stockton's going to have to be good again in this game to give them some balance and some explosiveness. I think this Georgia team is much tougher, I think, than a season ago on the lines of scrimmage. We mentioned it kind of leading in. The defense really turned a corner like mid-season. Early on, it was like, is Georgia just going to have to win games and shootouts? Because they don't have the offensive talent to do that. And that has flipped later in the season. And so I I think this will be a very different game than we saw earlier in the year. What's the over? The over is 55.5. Like the under is interesting there, because I think these are going to be two really physical teams. I mean, it always kind of seems to slow down in these high stakes games where you're going to see teams maybe be a little bit more sort of boxers feeling each other out for the first half and kind of see what we got. And I think Georgia, it'll be interesting to see. Like, Ole Miss can't just run it back what they did earlier in the season. So what kind of counter punches do they have? What did Pete Golding see or want to do in that first time around that now that it's his program, how he counters. So we'll see. By the way, quick aside. Apparently Lane Kiffin did his interview at the Texas Bowl. I watched the game and then I was watching the last part of it on my phone, about to go to sleep. I guess he left early. Do we care about this? I think it's interesting.
That he left the Texas Bowl early?
Yeah, I think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to say he's going out to see people in Houston and do some recruiting, maybe.
I don't think there's a lot of recruiting in Houston that's happening at 10:30 at night.
Yeah, you would think you would want to just be, or I don't know, did he want since Frank Wilson is not staying on his staff, by the way, which is kind of shocking.
Ole Miss, which is doubly interesting.
Yeah, and they're he's a legendary Louisiana guy. And so maybe Lane and Frank not on the same page, kind of want to just stay away and let him finish this team.
I don't know. I still think even if it's just if that's the case, maybe it's a try hard move, but just sit in a box and just see what you see from your guys. Who's on the sideline? What do you see from a coaching perspective? I don't know. I'm not going to say it's good or bad. It's definitely not a try hard move. I just think these are the things that don't mean anything until they do. Well, if it turns on you early and it's not going and you hear stories in year 2 of Lane Kiffin's lost the locker room. This is the kind of stuff that in retrospect, so a good example of this, okay, that I've seen in
Ole Miss fans are probably pissed at us for talking about Lane Kiffin right now in their game preview.
I'm sorry. Well, sorry, Lane's interesting. But right when I moved to Tennessee, John Ward, legendary broadcaster, died, okay? I went to his at a huge ceremony at the Thompson Bowling Arena. Jeremy Pruitt had been hired 6 months earlier. Didn't go. That doesn't matter in the moment, but when you see how the 3 years go and it becomes clear that he has no real desire to build relationships or do anything outside of recruiting and developing players, things that are part of being a head coaching job. It did seem in retrospect, it's that kind of did tell you something. I'm just saying. I thought it was interesting. I thought it was notable. I don't know that it's necessarily this huge deal or something you could just totally throw up. I just thought it was interesting. I'm sorry, Ole Miss fans. I thought it was interesting.
If he was keeping Frank Wilson on staff, I'd say yes. But I will say this to Ole Miss fans. I think getting Frank Wilson is pretty big for Pete Golding. He has long been one of the best recruiters in the country. So that's big for Ole Miss. I think so. Georgia, their statistical profile is a bit unusual. They're 60th in yards per rush. They can't really run the ball that great either. They're 121st in tackles for loss per game. This is not a defense that is putting you behind the chains. They are 7th in rush defense, and they're number 2 in red zone touchdown percentage on offense. They finish their drives. But third downs, they were allowing 50% third downs the first half of the year. The Alabama game, the championship, it was 20%. They really started to get off the field, which was what had been a problem for them. So their season-long statistics are kind of hard to fully wrap around because it's been way better in the second half of the year. Both of these teams are in the bottom 40 in takeaways. They're not teams that force a lot of turnovers, so may not have many in this game, but if you have one, it could be pretty big. Ole Miss, 78th in TFLs. They're not really getting those negative plays on either side. So what I'm watching for in this game, how is Lacey's health and can he get going? Because he was a non-factor in the first game against Georgia. And if you want any chance, you're going to have to be able to run the ball in this game. So what can Lacey do on the ground? Or is it all going to be Trinidad Chambliss? In Georgia, can you finish drives in the end zone? You did last time against Ole Miss. I think Georgia's going to be able to move the ball pretty easily on this Ole Miss defense. I think we saw Tulane do that. Tulane only punted 2 or 3 times in that game. I think Georgia's going to be able to move the ball. Are you ending the drives with field goals? Or are you ending the drives with touchdowns? They have been a very good team at ending with touchdowns. And so then can Ole Miss keep up, basically? I think that's what I'm looking for in this game. Any last thoughts and a pick from you?
No, like I said, I think this game will be a lot more interesting in retrospect to kind of see what are the adjustments, how do they work, and what do we learn about Pete Golding in this? In the lead up to this, I've had big questions about like when you have this kind of time to prepare, when you're a young head coach like Golding, which is weird that like this is kind of your learning ground. It's a huge game with national championship implications against Kirby Smart, who's probably the best coach in the game right now. So we're going to learn a lot about him in this situation. So I'm going to go with Ole Miss to keep this close. Maybe that's an apology for Ole Miss fans for derailing the conversation. But I just don't really trust like Georgia to flex in this situation on either side of the ball. I think Georgia wins, but I think Ole Miss covers and keeps this close.
I think Georgia wins, and I think they win by multiple scores. I think Georgia's going to be able to move the ball pretty well in this one. And if they can't, then, maybe Pete Golding's like a really, really good coach. But I think Georgia, the second half of the year, they figured it out. And I don't trust that Ole Miss defense. So I'm going to go Georgia, and Georgia wins comfortably. And then we will be, I guess I should have said this at the top of the show. We will be live, Bunch Formation After Dark, Thursday night after the Sugar Bowl. We'll both be home. We're going to do the big quarterfinal reaction show live on the YouTube page, Bunch Formation YouTube, and our Twitter accounts. It'll go out there as well. So we're going to do that live. It'll go up in the feed Friday morning. That'll be the second half show. We're going to do a live reaction to all of it. Bunch Formation YouTube. Please check that out. All right, going to wrap up here with the remaining bowl games. We actually got quite a few bowl games to speed through here, but this is the rest of them. So we're going to keep going with the bowl previews.
This is for all the Tostitos.
On Monday, the JLab Birmingham Bowl, Georgia Southern versus App State, 2:00 Eastern, ESPN. David, what is JLab?
I'd say a think tank that helps create really good journalists of all ages. You go there and they just pop you in the JLab, and you come out and you are a really good reporter, writer, ethically strong, all of those things. That's JLab.
Incorrect. JLab is a leading personal technology and audio brand known for delivering high-quality wireless headphones, earbuds, and office accessories. This game, by the way, you may have thought, wait a minute, isn't Georgia Southern App State a conference game and a rivalry game? You are correct. This is deeper than hate. Georgia Southern won this game 25-23 about a month ago. However, nobody wanted to play in the Birmingham Bowl. So they had to go through a bunch of teams, eventually got to App State, who agreed to play in this game. Georgia Southern, like I said, won this game. Georgia Southern, 8.5-point favorite this time around because App State will be without its top two quarterbacks and some other skill guys as well. David, what's your pick? I'm going to go Georgia Southern. No, I take that back.
I'm going to go.
This rivalry is weird. I'm going to say Georgia Southern just because of the opt-outs.
I'm going to say App State. They Jimmy rig some stuff up and figure out a way to win this game.
Those 5 and 7 teams win bowl games, I think, more than we think sometimes.
Yes, they do.
All right, on Tuesday, the Radiance Technologies Independence Bowl. David, what is Radiance Technologies?
Is that something to do with like cancer treatments?
No, they provide space solutions and warfighter support to the Department of Defense and NASA customers.
How do we get so many like War Machine sponsors of bowl games? Like,
because when you're sitting at home with your family over the holidays and you're just watching a football game that's on in the middle of the day, you think, wait a minute, I could really use a rocket launcher. Let me see if they don't have one. You know, I missed the Black Friday sale, but Radiance Technologies is offering me to send me one. So I think that's it. It's Coastal Carolina versus
Northrop Grumman. Get back in the game. We miss you.
Yeah, we're not done with those, by the way. Coastal Carolina versus Louisiana Tech, 2:00 Eastern, ESPN. Louisiana Tech, a 9.5-point favorite. Coastal Carolina doesn't have a head coach because they fired Tim Beck. Louisiana Tech head coach Sonny Cumbie, meanwhile, took a taser in front of his team for whatever reason to motivate them. I guess that was my reference at the beginning of the show. Louisiana Tech, really good defense this year. Sonny Cumbie almost got fired last year, but they couldn't really afford it. They kept him, had a solid enough year, get back to a bowl game. I'm going to go La Tech wins. 9.5's a lot, but I'm going to go with them.
Yeah, I will go with Louisiana Tech here, win and cover.
The Liberty Mutual Music City Bowl, Tennessee versus Illinois, 5:30 Eastern, ESPN. Liberty Mutual, the insurance company, we know that. Notable in this game, Tennessee will be without Chris Brazel, the wide receiver, and some other players. Over/under in this game, 61.5. They're expecting a lot of points. Tennessee's a 2.5-point favorite. I'm going to go with Illinois, though, because I think Brett Bielema likes getting up for these SEC opponents, and I think he'll tweet something witty after the game as well.
That's going to be a home field advantage for Tennessee. I'll take the Vols to get the job done.
All right. The Valero Alamo Bowl. David, you know what Valero is, right?
They are a gas company.
Correct. Here in Texas, and I don't know where else, but I didn't have that growing up. In Michigan, USC versus TCU, 9 o'clock Eastern, ESPN. USC a 6.5-point favorite. USC will be without Mekhi Lemon, the Biletnikoff receiver, the best receiver in the country. TCU will be without quarterback Josh Hoover, who has entered the transfer portal. Alamo Bowl is always kind of wacky, always fun. Always gets a solid matchup. I think I've never covered it, but I hear they do a really good job just kind of putting that game on. I have covered it.
It's a good game. Alamo Dome, very underrated place to watch, cover a game. San Antonio's it's an interest. I've come around a little bit on San Antonio as a city.
It's a great event city. I would love for the national championship to be there because everything's walkable. It's good. I'm gonna go USC in this game.
I will. Who is TCU going to play at quarterback with Josh Hoover gone? Do we know?
I've actually not looked that up, but
I'll go with USC. They got a bunch of guys coming back. I'll stick with them.
Yeah, TCU, I believe, will also be without Kendall Briles, the OC.
Presumably, I don't know why you'd stick around for this. So.
Yeah, but all right. On Wednesday, the Reliaquest Bowl, Iowa versus Vanderbilt, noon Eastern, ESPN. David, what is Reliaquest?
I should know this because they've been in the bowl game a while. I really have no idea, actually. Not a car situation, right? I think about the CarQuest Bowl or I don't know. But no, I don't know what Reliaquest is.
Reliaquest is a leading AI-powered cybersecurity company.
Sure.
Formerly the Outback Bowl. For me, it'll always be the Outback Bowl. Like that game always had, there was a reverence for the Outback Bowl. Like you knew the Outback Bowl was going to be a good game. It was going to be a Big Ten SEC game.
I was going to be playing for some reason every time.
And that's what we have again. Iowa, Vanderbilt, a 4.5-point favorite. No Eli Stowers, the best tight end in the country. He's preparing for the draft, but Diego Pavia will be playing because he's a dog.
I would like to say, Chris, I went back and counted this. Since 2003, Iowa has played in 1, 2, 3.
Wait, hold on. Wait, you cut out there. Repeat that again.
I said since 2003, I went back and looked. Iowa has played in the Outback Bowl 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and now 7 times. Because it's like permanently the spot for like the 5th best Big Ten team, which is almost permanently Iowa.
And that doesn't even include the Capital One Bowls that they were in, which were kind of the same thing. Big Ten SEC game on New Year's. That was when they beat the LSU, the Drew Tate Hail Mary that one time. They're always in Orlando or Tampa for bowl season every year. It works. What's your pick?
I think you're going to see Vandy, a very motivated Vandy, come out here. Might be the swan song for our guy, Diego Pavia, although eligibility becoming more and more of an amorphous concept in college sports, so we'll see.
He's already said he's not coming back.
Yeah, things change, Chris. We'll see. But no, I think this will be it for him. I think we're going to see him have a great game here and get the job done.
Man, like Iowa in these bowl games, I love them. Like I don't know what the record is in all those Outback Bowls that you listed, but I feel like there's a lot of wins in them as well.
We got a 1-1, 2-1, 2-2, 2-3, 3-3. So they're 3-3.
Yeah. I'm going to go Vanderbilt because I believe in Diego Pavia, but I think Iowa can very much win this game and get like 2 or 3 interceptions. Like, would not put it past Iowa. I think it's very possible. All right, the Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl in beautiful El Paso. Arizona State versus Duke, 2:00 Eastern, CBS. David, we know who Tony the Tiger is. He's great. This is the bowl where they dump the Frosted Flakes. No Sam Levitt.
Also one of 2 bowls that aren't on ESPN, I think, right?
Yes, and I think the other one's on here as well.
Oh,
3 because the Arizona Bowl is on the CW.
Oh yeah.
The Duke a 3-point favorite because Arizona has no Sam Levitt, and it appears Darian Mensah, the quarterback for Duke, is coming back and staying at Duke and all that kind of stuff. So, what's your pick?
I'm gonna go with Duke. The ACC champs carrying the banner.
You saw them in person. I wouldn't put it past Jeff Sims to get another win here for Arizona State. 3 points despite that is, I think, respecting Arizona State. I'm going to go Duke as well. I think they'll be more motivated for this one. The Cheez-It Citrus Bowl, Michigan versus Texas, 3:00 Eastern, ABC. This is the former Capital One Bowl, but it's long been the Citrus Bowl. A lot of people not in this game. For Texas, no Anthony Hill, no Michael Taff, no CJ Baxter, no Trey Wisner, who's going in the portal, no Malik Muhammad. Michigan has no head coach, no Sharon Moore, and I believe edge rusher Derek Moore is out. There could be more, but as of recording, I think that's it. Texas, 8.5-point favorite. What do you think?
I mean, I think you got to go Texas here. Here's a question for you, Chris. Do you think Sharon Moore watches this game?
Ooh, I don't know what he's doing at this moment. He's out of jail, but I don't know. Like he wasn't like a Michigan man, so to speak. So I mean, like
he's an Oklahoma man.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not sure.
That I think that's kind of interesting. Of like how you sort of spend your days at this point. But
we know he can't. We know he'll be in the state of Michigan because he can't leave the state. So
yes, but I'm gonna go with Texas here just because Michigan just seems messy and unfocused, and I think that officially means that Michigan will win this game.
I don't know. Like I would have thought. Remember last year, Michigan had a bunch of opt-outs, and they beat an Alabama team that didn't have many opt-outs.
Yeah,
and like a lot of just like pride took over, and like Biff Poggi when he was the interim head coach a couple of times, called a perfectly fine game. Like he knows what he's doing there, and he knows how to put the ball in the hands of the right players.
Yeah.
I'm going to go Texas, but that's a lot of really good Texas players not playing.
Yeah, it is.
And I would not be surprised if Michigan wins this game and they celebrate Biff and all that stuff. Like, I'm going to go Texas, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's Michigan. All right.
Yeah, I don't trust Texas here, but, Arch Manning, future #1 pick, right? So, he'll get the job done.
The SRS Distribution Las Vegas Bowl. David, what is SRS Distribution?
I got to think they're one of America's leading distributors. Not unlike, the Trey Youngs, the John Stocktons, the Mark Prices of the world.
Did you look this up on the notes where I have it written down?
No, I did not, but it is distribution in the name. So
they are the fastest growing distributor of building products in the United States.
Oh, I figured they just distributed SRS. So they do building. Okay, sure.
So you didn't know that Bush's is located in Knoxville.
I mean, I got to be honest. I'm not super well up on my baked bean HQ locales.
So SRS Distribution headquarters, which I didn't know, in McKinney, Texas, right down the road from me.
Okay,
didn't know that. So this game is, I forgot to say,
Nebraska. Can I get a brief McKinney, Texas story, Chris?
We're going long, but make it brief. Yes.
It's not a story necessarily, but I have not spent a lot of time in McKinney. But I went and did a story on Julius Randle. Went and hung out with his mom at their house and wrote about Julius Randle. Nicest lady in the world. Shout out to Julius Randle.
All right.
This was when they were going to the Final Four. So
Sure. All right. Nebraska versus Utah is the game, 3:30 Eastern, ESPN. Utah, a 14-point favorite. Utah will be without Kyle Whittingham and some of its top offensive linemen. Nebraska will be without Emmett Johnson. It's really good running back. Nebraska, pretty famously this year, could not stop the run. David, what does Utah like to do?
They like to run the ball and pound you.
They are, I believe, the number one rush offense in the country as well. Let me double check that. Because Oregon was number 2. Yep. Utah, number 1, 6 yards per carry. Yes, they're without some of the top offensive linemen, but I think Utah wins this game. They cover, they win big. You can finally get some positive momentum back from Morgan Scalley after the whole Kyle Whittingham debacle. What's your pick?
I'm going to go with Nebraska to cover.
All right. On Friday, the Lockheed Martin Armed Forces Bowl in Fort Worth, Texas. David, what is Lockheed Martin?
They do something with war machines. Again, a lot of war sponsors. I guess they're doing great.
A leading global security, defense, and aerospace contractor. Correct. Funny thing about
which one are the helicopters people? Bell helicopters, right? They're not in the bowl game anymore.
I don't think so. A funny thing about living in Texas in the DFW area, I've moved, and no matter where you are, you're near one of the big defense contractors. Like I used to be down, I think, by a Lockheed Martin plant. Now I'm up by Raytheon Technologies, I think is not Radiance.
I had a friend of mine. A friend of mine worked for them. He was like a engineer who worked on like helicopters. It was interesting. He had an interesting job.
But like they go all, especially Fort Worth, big military town. Like they bring the helicopters and all that stuff. Like in the city, you can kind of see all that stuff. It's there. The game, by the way, Rice versus Texas State, 1:00 Eastern, ESPN Friday. Rice is a 5-7 team that got in. Texas State, a 13.5-point favorite. I'm going to go, that's a lot of points.
Mm-hmm.
Rice in the second half of the year was not great, though, and they've had some guys go into the portal. I'm going to go Texas State. Wins and covers.
I think it's a high-scoring game, a lot of points, and Rice scores enough to cover.
The AutoZone Liberty Bowl in Memphis, Navy versus Cincinnati, 4:30 Eastern, ESPN. David, what is AutoZone?
I just bought some windshield wipers from them and a brake light replacement that I had to do on my car. So that is, I mean, I don't know what the difference is between AutoZone and like O'Reilly's. They seem like they're the same. I guess. In my town, they're literally across the street from each other. They're the same thing. I wonder if do they get in like street fights or do they go to lunch together? I'm curious.
I don't know, but AutoZone, great place. I've been there many times. I've had car problems over the last couple of years. If you need to get a battery checked out, they do that stuff for free. They've been helpful. Navy is a 7-point favorite in this game because Cincinnati will be without Brendan Sorsby, the quarterback who's in the portal, and also Dante Corleone, the Godfather, on defense. My strategy is always in a bowl game, pick the Service Academy because the other team is usually maybe not as focused. And if you're not focused against the Service Academy, they will run all over you. We saw Army do that to UConn, as was my pick. So I'm going to go Navy.
Yeah, I'm going to go Navy as well. Army got it done. You mentioned that. Navy doubles up here on Cincinnati.
The Trust and Will Holiday Bowl, Arizona versus SMU, 8:00 Eastern on Fox. This is the other bowl game, not on ESPN. David, what is Trust and Will?
I assume it's a company that deals with trusts and wills, but do you not have to like come up with a name for your company? This is the college football playoff of companies, right?
So no, it is not a CBS sitcom, but it's literally trustandwill.com. Like that's what they are. They provide self-guided online estate planning services, most notably wills and trusts. This is a game, by the way. This is the bowl game that kicked the tires on trying to see if they could play it in Saudi Arabia. Remember that? Some documents came out because these non-ESPN bowl games are kind of in a tough spot because ESPN owns a lot of them, and so they've Holiday Bowl, ton of history in this game, by the way, in San Diego. Been really good. Usually has good games, but it's just kind of because it's off on Fox. It's always been just a little bit different. But as for the game, not many notable opt-outs from what I could see. I think this is a great game. Arizona, 9. I think both these teams won 9 games. SMU might have been 8-4, but SMU nearly made the ACC championship game in the playoff. Arizona's 9-3. Good year, good teams, good quarterbacks. What's your pick?
I'm going to go with SMU to win this thing outright.
I was very close on that. I'm going to go Arizona, though, with SMU going cross-country again. Didn't play great at Cal. I think Arizona is kind of one of the best teams nobody really talked about all year. I'm going to go with the Wildcats, win and cover. The Duke's Mayo Bowl in David's backyard in Charlotte. Wake Forest versus Mississippi State. I forgot to put the time down, but this game is on Friday. I believe it's Friday night. Mississippi State, 5-7. Another 5-7 team sneaking in. David, we know what Duke's Mayo is, right?
They're the company that dumps the mayonnaise on the coach, right? That's all they do.
Yes.
Right?
And then people put the Brazzers logo over it.
I feel like I should go to this and see the coach dump in person. I don't know if I'm going to be back in town
Friday night.
Maybe we'll see. I should think about it. I need to reach out to Charlotte's people and see if I can. I should kick this idea around. I hadn't thought about it, but I should probably think about it.
So Wake Forest went 8-4, Mississippi State 5-7, but Mississippi State a 3.5-point favorite. I don't think I saw many notable opt-outs from this game, but I'm going to go Wake Forest. I think they've been kind of overlooked all year. Jake Dicker's done a really, really good year there.
Yeah, Jake Dickert and Jeff Levy. I have no preference of which one of them gets the Mayo bath here. You better take the Mayo bath. That's the only thing. But I'm going to say Wake Forest wins this game.
All right, so we've both taken Wake on that game. All right, this has been a long episode. We're going to end it the way we always do, and that is by remembering some guys.
It's better than this. Guys being dudes.
I'm going to go with Jake Haener, former Washington, but most notably Fresno State quarterback. Had a really good, solid career there. I think he's still hanging around in the NFL. He came to mind because Haynes King and Georgia Tech lost in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Haynes King, one of those guys who always looked like he was hanging on, held together by string, but he toughed it out. One of the toughest college football players in recent memory. And it felt like he took that mantle from Jake Haener, a guy who was always playing with one arm and making plays. So someone else will have to pick up the mantle now. It might be Bear Bachmeier, honestly, who will be that guy who's always be hurt but makes plays. But Jake Haener, really fun quarterback at Fresno State, especially. I always remember when he led that comeback against UCLA, throws the touchdown. He's like down on his knees like this. He's in like a
that game was at like 1:30 in the morning. That's all I remember about it.
Had to be in like a full body cast after that game or something like that. Unbelievably tough dude. Jake Haener, that's my guy.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to go with another memorable quarterback, Greg Ward Jr. He did help fuel really proud year of Houston football, the year that they went 13-1 under Tom Herman. That was his best year. Sort of a dual threat sort of guy. He had a better passing year the next year, but 21 rushing touchdowns that year, 17 passing touchdowns. Transitioned to being a receiver when he went to the NFL. Had kind of a little bit of a brief NFL career, but just a fun college football player and a guy that I think would have done really well in the NIL era. But that Houston team was really fun. They had a bunch of NFL talent. Ed Oliver, probably the biggest star on that team, but Greg Ward, extremely fun player. Greg Ward, we remember you.
And a nomination from listener Scott Rinda, who says, "Hi, Chris and David. Love your podcast. Never miss an episode. I would like to nominate Lawrence Maroney for remembering some guys. Lawrence was a running back with Minnesota from 2003 to 2005, running for over 1,000 yards in each of those years, almost 4,000 yards for his career. Although his NFL career never fully lived up to its promise, it was really fun to watch dominate in college and formed a dynamic duo with Marion Barber III while at Minnesota." Yeah, like, again, like 02-03 is like when I got fully into college football, and that 2003 Minnesota team with Maroney and Barber, so much fun. Playing in the old, was it the Metrodome? Yeah, the Metrodome where Minnesota played.
Yeah, I think that's right.
So great memories of Maroney playing Big Ten football, some Little Brown Jug games and whatnot. All right. So reminder, we will be live Thursday night after the Sugar Bowl to recap all the quarterfinals. Bunch of information after dark on YouTube and Twitter. And then that will be, if you don't watch it live, that show will be in your feeds Friday morning. I'm fired up, man, for these games. Like
great.
all 4 of these games, I could see going either way. Lots of storylines, lots of narratives. Then we're going to be down to the Final Four. This is the fun of the 12-team playoff. Looking forward to being at the Cotton Bowl on Friday night. All right. So for David Ubben, I am Chris Vanini. Thank you for listening and watching Bunch Formation, and we will talk to you on Thursday night.
And if you want to pull an upset, bring back the turnover chain.